One of my favorite things about the metaverse is the fact that it can mean anything, right? And the definition for the metaverse is often what is most convenient for the people talking about it. It's like when my boyfriend says the sink is clean. Like, what do you mean by clean? What is clean to you? Yeah, to companies that sell virtual reality equipment, the metaverse is accessible to virtual reality. For companies that own video game companies, the metaverse is something that will be a platform for that IP. For companies that have so-called metaverses that exist on the blockchain, the metaverse lives on the blockchain. So the definition right now is so malleable, and I'd love to hear from you, Brad. Don't define the metaverse, but tell me, how long have we really been talking about it?
Wow, probably since the first time I cleaned a sink. Well, certainly, everyone knows the book that came out, so Snow Crash. But probably when The Sims kind of came out, or Castle, when you could start doing something where two people were in a world or a game or anything at the same time, that's probably when we started doing it. So probably The Sims, and of course Second Life. When Second Life came out was probably at that point. Probably when the first gaming engine was created that allowed creators to do things and to have person-to-person transactions, probably then. That would be the...
So 15 years ago?
Yeah, 2004, probably 2003, yeah.
It's interesting you don't say Second Life. So Second Life is the virtual world, notably not a video game, that Linden Lab, Brad's company, produces. And Second Life's been around since
2003, like really 2003, 2004. It was a idea before that.
Is Second Life a metaverse?
No, I think Second Life is a virtual world. We don't use the term metaverse inside the company. If I'm trying to get into Bloomberg or something like that, I'll say we're a metaverse for sure. But the metaverse as a next version of the internet, or what Mark Zuckerberg is calling it, or all these things, then we're part of that. But I really think of us as a virtual world, and I think it's an important distinction.
Yeah, we use the term a lot, open world platforms or gaming platforms. We primarily work with Minecraft and Roblox. Again, Minecraft's been around for over a decade, and we're really focused on that. And you don't need a VR headset for those experiences, right? Those are open world games that have existed for some time, and they're highly accessible.
I think that's a really great point. I mean, you work with gamers so much, and immersion means something so different to every person. To some people, it's virtual reality. To other people, you can be immersed in 16-bit pixel video games, right? To you, what does immersion mean, and how does that impact the way that people do interact with video games?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that, for me, having worked now in this space for about 7 years, that I find so fascinating is, to me, it's about community and the collective, right? So when you talk about games like Minecraft and Roblox, they're putting the tools, they're democratizing game design effectively. They're putting the tools in the hands of passionate gamers, and they're allowing them to create their own experiences. They're speaking to the widest segment of gamers out there, because some are more focused on creation than competition. But then it's all the community that's happening. It's the chat, it's finding your own like-minded people, it's consuming additional content around those game experiences online. So it's really, it's just really a preferred form of entertainment and activity. And I often say to brands that we're trying to bring into these gaming platforms that, you need to think of it as the kind of the digital cul-de-sac. This is the hangout zone after school, and this is where, again, creation, the collective, and that community is happening.
When people in the tech industry today talk about the next internet, the successor to the mobile web, the metaverse, they talk a lot about it as a social hub, just like you, the cul-de-sac, right? But to what extent is the games industry already creating that vision for the future?
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, all the seeds are there right now with those games. And I think the fact that you can now have commerce, you can see how inside digital games is driving physical commerce. I think a lot of those seeds are there, and how that can apply to education and other categories, I think is significant. The thing that I find, and look, I'm not a Minecraft or Roblox player, right, or developer, but what I do think is so inspired as we work with a lot of the top developers with those games and understand more about the communities they reach, is the fact that you can really truly be anything in those worlds. So like that notion that that right now the seeds are happening in gaming of that feeling of limitlessness and being anything or traveling anywhere, I think is pretty inspired.
The connection you're making between commerce and self-actualizing in these virtual worlds, I think, is very interesting, and I'd love to hear from you. Do you see any sort of relationship there with your experience with Second Life?
Yeah. So first, the social aspect is primary, right? So much like in the real world, the virtual worlds share a lot with the real world. So the real world has infrastructure and roads and things like that. They have legal systems and governments, good or bad. They have social, right? And that's the reason we exist in San Francisco, or Metaverse of San Francisco or New York. And they have money, right, and commerce. And so similarly, in the virtual world, we have gaming engines. We have rules. You can't create a house and have a party, and then you walk into my party. I don't want you there. I want you there. I'll take both of them. So that's really critical. You have your avatar. You have your stuff. But you also have commerce. And so since that's what you asked, but I want to be clear that social is the primary driver. Games are like a gateway drug into the social aspect, and that's what's going to be the future. When we talk about commerce, there's different types. There's person-to-person commerce, right? So I'm in the world, I've done something, I receive money for it. I can then spend that money in world, or I can take it out. There's player-to-owner commerce, right? I actually am giving the money to Roblox. Roblox is doing something with it, or Minecraft, or Fortnite. And then there's external commerce that comes in, so ethical advertising, building experiences and things like that, and paying money into the system. That's a different type of commerce. And then there's the unethical advertising, which is a completely different type of commerce that we all have to be very careful about.
One thing I would, though, build on your point about social is you said self-actualization. And I do think it's a small little anecdote, but when I first joined the company, we were running an experience for youth, a gaming-based experience around Minecraft. And a kid came in to the location where we were holding the event, and I said, well, what's your Minecraft ID name? And he said, well, it's Monkey Man 08. And I was like, all right. I'm like, how'd you come up with that? And he's like, I don't know. I just came up with it. And he was so fascinated with himself. And again, about the time, I'd say he's probably about 9 or 10, but he said he picked it out at 4 or 5 years old. And I thought to myself, gosh, like, what was that time when we all started to have the world start to put some conditions on us? Like, was it 2nd, 3rd grade where you were figuring out, like, am I going to be athletic? Am I going to get good grades? Am I going to be popular? Like, and instantly, like, we started to get put in a box. And you think about then how my generation starts to try to express their aspirational self now through their Instagram, and it's a sad, kind of state in a way. And there was something beautiful about the reversal of that if we could break. Again, I'm not trying to get too sappy with everybody, but it changed my relationship to these games because of the way that it could change and kind of the aspirational view. Your digital self could be unleashed and therefore change the way that you manifest yourself physically as well.
Over time, though, one thing we've seen is companies more seeking to kind of collapse these two identities, our real identities and our virtual ones. You can think about the naming policy on Facebook, for example. Where do you think we're going to be headed? Do you think we'll be able to maintain these sort of separate identities online?
Well, gosh, I don't know if we'll be able to, but I do think that it's true that the consumers that we deal with, we reach about 70 million monthly players in the metaverse and these open world games. And certainly they do want the convergence on a more emotional level. They want their digital selves to identify and enjoy the same things that their physical identities have. And so they want the experience. They don't see it as separate lives. They see it as one life. As far as the ability to keep them separate if you choose, I'm not sure.
A great segue into Second Life.
Well, yeah. So the challenge that I would give to all the VCs and entrepreneurs and things like that is, how do we create a system, an identity that is at the exact same time completely anonymous and absolutely known, right? So Schoenberg's cat, right? The cat in the box, and it's alive and dead at the same time. The same thing has to happen with your identity. You're going to have a wallet. You're going to want your money. You're going to want your stuff. You're going to want total anonymity. But you're also going to want to transact. You're going to want to be trusted, and that requires complete known. So the closest company out there that kind of has done a good job of that is like eBay, right? I buy something from someone on eBay and I know their rating. I actually have no idea who they are, right? We have our eBay handles, but I've done 7,000 transactions and I have a 5-star rating. I'm both anonymous and known at the same time. Now the challenge with that is that works really, really well in a centralized owned system, right? So we do a great job at it because we know everything. We make sure that even we can't touch the data, right? It's all been anonymized and we don't even have access to it. And yet, if you want to take money out of the system, I have to know exactly who you are. There's not, I go to jail if I don't know who you are. And so how do I create that? That'll be the future when we can do that, because I'll have an avatar that you know without actually knowing it. Now there's the danger of that, of course, if we move into a system where I can be both anonymous and known, but I do bad things, right? So then you're going to have a really interesting situation. And I know it sounds absolutely awful, but it might be the government that keeps this list. I mean, no one wants that. Everyone wants it on Web3, but that actually can lead to really bad things happening. So this is going to be super interesting, a construct that we look at in the future.
Yeah.
It really seems like we're kind of talking around blockchain right now. So maybe let's just kind of dive into it. Do you feel that the blockchain would be an asset or a detriment to any sort of metaverse built on the principles that you've been exploring through Second Life and virtual worlds?
So the funny thing about the way we look at it in the virtual world, like, so blockchain, people want it to be anonymous. It's actually the total opposite, right? The whole point of blockchain is that everybody knows everything. It's a huge Word document. So if you talk about an NFT and you put that, by definition, NFT is on the blockchain. We've got 2.2 billion items. We can transact in a 1/250th of a penny. That does not work on the blockchain. So, and the other thing about blockchain is it dovetails with crypto, which we've talked in the past, which, as you know, I'll use the word because I asked permission, is the apocalypse. And so, so when I start thinking about metaverse, blockchain, crypto, I see that as a future, but I think it's as much of a risk as it is a positive. If we get into a point where you have $70,000 in your account and that gets hacked, we have a big problem. If you have $70,000 and I go under and I own it, we have an equally big problem. So, so the blockchain could be good, but I think crypto in virtual worlds and metaverses does not work. And I have a whole, we've looked at it for a long time, and we cannot figure out how a currency that trades outside, the easiest example is if you have crypto and you have your world and I want to buy that jacket and every day the crypto is going up 10%, I don't spend my crypto, I hold on to it. And if every day it's going down 10%, you don't accept it. It really destroys the ability to transact inside. And what makes it even worse is if you have a different world and a different crypto in virtual worlds, there's no market clearing price. If you think you can do it, the economics don't work because wings are really valuable to you, swords are really valuable to you, they're 10 to 1 each, there's no crossing mechanism. So that's where I see the risk of that.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think he said it well, but I think it's the regulation and the interoperability that makes me concerned as well. When we're talking about kind of Facebook Meta, I think we're a long way away from really understanding what it would take for all these walled gardens, and then again the regulation between them. So for us right now, we focus mostly on. Do I think that in-game currency and how that will further fuel and maybe convert into physical dollars, that flat conversion? I think that is powerful. But the regulation between currencies concerns me.
It's interesting though, because a lot of the games companies that are making metaverse plays talk a lot about digital ownership. And that, of course, is sort of a blockchain concept, the idea of owning the cosmetics that you purchased in League of Legends and then maybe being able to play with those in World of Warcraft or Fortnite or another game. Do you feel like gamers actually want that?
It's hard for me to imagine. I mean, first of all, the gaming segment is so fragmented. I don't think there's a lot of, League of Legends players who are hopping into Minecraft right now, their avatars. So maybe it's just hard to kind of imagine that. But I do think, there's a place for your digital goods to move in and out of inside gaming platforms. I think there's a point about ownership, but I'm not sure that we'll see a day when EA and Riot merge their in-game currency platforms soon.
Yeah, and that's the thing is we conflate digital ownership with blockchain. You can have digital ownership. What people really mean is the ability to move things from one to the next. The technical challenge on that is pretty staggering. Someone will figure that out. The emotional part, if I move from New York to San Francisco and I can't bring my stuff, that's irritating, right? But bringing my money is critical. So it's really a lot of issues wrapped up into one, and then because of VCs and all the goodness out there of sponsoring great ideas, we've decided that to have the ownership, it has to be on the blockchain because that's immutable. People have had ownership in our world. I can only speak about our world. People have total ownership of their goods. We've programmed it in. You can't steal someone's jacket. So the ownership is there. You can't take it to Decentraland because there's no concept. But even if it was on blockchain, you still can't take it to Decentraland. So we're a long way away from that. But conceptually, it's incredibly important to those that are going to reside in virtual worlds and metaverses.
Let's talk about ownership inside of the virtual world, and specifically digital real estate. I saw a headline the other day about a piece of virtual land selling for like $5 million, right? Can you tell me, how does real estate Second Life? And did it in any way sort of predict what we're seeing today in the Sandbox or Decentraland?
Well, it works very early in Second Life because we have not sold land for $5 million yet. So here's the way we look at it, and this is critical. I actually think this land. So running a metaverse costs money. You run it on AWS. You have your own servers. It costs money. You must pay for that. So there's only a few ways that I can pay for that. I can make money on transactions. I can charge people to be there. I can sell land. Or I can bring in advertising. Let's put that aside. Obviously, you're hearing that's not my favorite way of doing it. Behavioral modification in the metaverse is really, really intense and really risky, which is not the type of advertising that you do, to be clear. So when we say land, what we do is we charge rent, just like in the real world. The analog between virtual and physical is much tighter than people think. So we charge rent. Why does that work? Well, if you're renting land from me at $250 a month, you either have to enjoy that for just that, or you re-rent it to other people. And why would they do it? Because they enjoy it, and they can put a store on it, and they can make money. So so we believe that land is a business model that drives the moral compass of the metaverse, right? So we think business model drives all that, and so we believe in that. What we don't have is an opportunity to sell land because we didn't build it into the system outside of $1,000 or $250, and that has kept us back. And that's when you ask the second part of your question: did that precurse the sandbox? Yeah, because actually land is really valuable at times. I know exactly how much it's worth. I can present value the thing, and it's really valuable. We missed that because of our commitment, and because we didn't put it on the blockchain. You can't trade land. You can buy land in our world, but you can't put it on OpenSea. That takes away the $5 million. So, and as the owner, that was a big miss.
I mean, I would say in many ways, inside like our owned and operated properties like Mine Hut, we're selling land too. Come in, create your own private server. To your point, there's an infrastructure cost to that. For a certain, minimum offer. You can create that private server for free. That means you can invite anybody into your land you want. You can build anything on your land. When you go back to your land, you don't have to be worried that it got torn down. It's really no different. If you want to get more land, though, if you want more server space, you want to invite more friends, then you have to pay for that. And so it's really not that different. And the way that we partner with game developers is very similar. They out and they've submitted their on it. The way of making money off of that is that they are working off the backbone of the e-commerce site that drives the engines of Minecraft and Roblox. So they're getting a cut of the microtransactions in the game. But then we have a way to introduce and bring brands into those games. So maybe SpongeBob takes you on a wild adventure in the game, and that becomes an additional revenue stream for them. So, this notion of how these open world platforms have created these massive creator economies, I think, is another important thread to why it has become such a dominant form of preferred gaming entertainment.
We've seen discussions recently about sort of the revenue split between creators who are making content inside of virtual worlds and video games and companies that are sort of profiting off of that. I'm thinking about some of the controversies around Roblox and the percentage that child developers sometimes earn off of their creations, people feel can be unfair. Is that something that you've been thinking about with your properties?
Well, certainly our technology is really meant to empower those Roblox developers and Minecraft developers to have a second revenue stream, right? So they're getting a cut of the brand revenue that we're bringing in. They're getting access to our analytics suite. That helps them understand more about the game, who's playing the game, how are they engaging. That helps them keep their game robust. And certainly I think that, the kind of the epic Apple kind of debate, as well when it came to mobile gaming, and the notion of, is it fair that they're taking so much of that mobile gaming revenue? And look, at the end of the day, you need that phone as well to make that transaction. So, there was a legitimate kind of conflict on both sides, but we really focus, we know that so much of these gaming engines are about democratization of gameplay. And so, and having great positive game experiences. And so, we focus a lot on COPPA compliance, we're KidSafe certified, and making sure that everything we're doing is helping the livelihood of that everyday player and developer. And that keeps our interest aligned well with the Minecrafts and Robloxes of the world.
Well, I hope that if the Metaverse does come, it will be based on sort of the ethics that you just described. That's it for our panel, and thank you guys so much for joining us.